Welcome everyone to the Blue Collar Startup Podcast, where hard work meets big ideas. This is your home for real talk, real stories, and real strategies from the front lines of life and the business of the trades. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media.
I'm your other host, Derek Foster of Daco Cleaning Systems. How we doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
Good, good. I've been looking forward to this show for the last week now.
Yeah,
Real excited about our guest today. How you been?
I've been well. I've been well.
Yeah,
It sounds like I've already gotten over whatever you're going through right now by the stuffiness I can hear in your voice right now.
back to school, man.
Oh,
Uh,
it hit us hard last week.
yeah, it's unavoidable to a certain extent, but and our kids are in gymnastics and
Oh,
taekwondo
yeah.
and all kinds of stuff now. So it's constant. Somebody's always got a cold.
Yep, and they're young too. I remember when my kids were a lot younger in that like 5 to 7 year old category, we were just sick all the time. It was just, their immune systems are still getting up and going, so they're always bringing home bugs and a lot of fun. A
Oh
lot of
yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
well, let's get to work. Let's introduce our guest, which I know we're both excited about. Welcome, Mack Story.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Michael and Derek, for having me on. It's a privilege to be here and speak with you guys today.
Yeah, I think the privilege is ours,
Yeah,
but
100%. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
um,
Absolutely.
Mac, you obviously do a lot of things, right? You're a speaker, you're an author, you run a podcast, and so I'm sure there's other things too that you'll tell us about. So you want to just take a couple minutes and just tell our audience about who you are and kind of some of the things that you're up to.
All right. Well, I'm a blue collar guy. I come from the manufacturing space. And first 10 years of my career, I was entry level factory worker, operating CNC lathes, mills, and drills, and gear shapers, and working second shift, third shift, 14, 16 hours. Uh, I remember actually later on in my career, toward the end, when I worked my way up into to being in a management role, I worked 24 plus hours one shift and got paid for 8. You know how that salary job, you know, it don't matter how long you work, you get paid. But I was there. I had let my team down on a project, and so I let them go. But I stayed and worked all night, make sure that they were caught up the next day because it was a painting project, and I ordered the paint, but when I went to pick up the paint, they had sold the paint to somebody else. So, and I waited till the last minute to go pick it up. So that's why I took responsibility, even though I had thought I had proactively planned ahead and all that sort of stuff. Well, yeah, leaders, high impact leaders, always look in the mirror and say, "How am I responsible?" Well, that in that case, I didn't order it 2 or 3 days in advance and pick it up 2 or 3 days in advance so I could work out all the issues. That was how I was got that wrong. But anyway, after 10 years of working on the machines, I started working my way up and basically did computer aided design and drafting, that sort of thing, for process drawings for manufacturing processes, for toolings, for chuck setups, and all that stuff. And got into CNC programming as well. I was doing both of them jobs were kind of the same job. You had to do both things, drafting and programming. And then I got into cost estimation engineering and process engineering. And the last 3 years, from 2005 to 2008, the last 3 years in my 20-year manufacturing career as an employee, uh, I was the lean manufacturing manager and also the quality manager. But for a plant of about 200 people, we were one of 70 plants within a 2 or 3 billion dollar company, 70 plants around the world. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with lean construction or lean manufacturing, lean healthcare. It's a bunch of principles related to process improvement. Just throw a nugget out there. If someone's listening and you're not familiar with lean, whatever industry you're in, you need to take a deeper dive in and learn about lean, because you're leaving a lot on the table. And I mean, it's most companies don't have any idea how much waste is in their process. I mean,
Yeah.
lost taking too much time and that sort of stuff. But a lot of companies do it wrong. So there's a negative stereotype when you hear the word lean. People think it means just cut out people. I didn't cut out people. That wasn't the business I was in. People who truly understand it, they eliminate waste. They improve productivity, reduce downtime, that sort of stuff. But you never eliminate people. If you're doing it the real way, you don't eliminate people. As soon as you eliminate people, you're done. You're done having people support you. As soon as they help you improve a process, if you get rid of them, they're not going to help you anymore. So you got to have that commitment. If you're doing it the real way, where you actually respect the people. That's
Hmm.
two pillars of lean are respect for people and continuous improvement. Unfortunately, a lot of people focus only on the continuous improvement piece, and they don't do very much for the respect for people piece. So anyway, did that. That was basically a snapshot of 2000 or 1988 to 2008. In 2008, I started my own lean consulting business, started helping multiple manufacturers and with process improvement. And I was booked solid for 4 years up until 2012. And 2012, I started doing what I'm doing now, which is speaking and writing about leadership development, personal growth, leading change, teamwork, cultural transformation, how to sell with a high degree of character. Everything I do and talk about is character-based development. So help you live a better life at home and at work. So that's about 36 years thrown in. I forgot to say right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. I was in the infantry reserve unit from 87 to 91. And back in those days, I just wanted to kill everybody. And today I want to help everybody. So I'm better now. I've unlearned a lot of stuff. And it's one reason I'm passionate about what I talk about and write about is because we can reset at any moment. We can push the reset button and choose a different way of being. And it don't mean you're going to be that way instantly, but you can start working your way towards, having a better life at home and at work.
Yeah. Now you mentioned writing. So you've got, how many books did you say you have now?
My wife and I have 35 together total, and some of those, 6 of those are her journals. 15 of those books are my books. I've got a series I call the Blue Collar Leadership series. There's 8 books in there, 5 what I call real books, and then there's 3 of what we call Blue Collar Leadership Toolbox Tips books. One of those Rhea put together. The other 2 I put together. The real books, the 5 main books, they're 30 chapters, 3 pages each. So I wrote them for blue collar folks like me that don't like to read. But what I've discovered is they like to read these little books. I have a lot of blue collar guys say, "Man, you should make the pages yellow so I won't have to highlight everything." And one guy said, "Man, I love your books. They thin." He said, "But he said they got all the stuff without the fluff." And that's, I stole that line from him because that was a good line. And that's the way I try to write my books. I've been reading every day since 2008, 17 years. When I discovered this stuff, it's part of my passion. Is 20 years into my career when I started my own consulting company. That's actually also the same time that I discovered this type content, and I had never heard about it. It's part of where my passion comes from. Is 20 years working for multi-billion-dollar global companies. No leader had ever invested 1 penny or 1 minute introducing me to the type content I speak about and write about now. And when I discovered it, I'm like, how come nobody's teaching us this stuff? And what I discovered as I started reading and learning it and going to conferences is this stuff seemed to be reserved for white collar executives, up at the high end of big companies. And I said, well, why can't I just take these principles, wrap my blue collar stories around them, and give it to the regular folks? I mean, I'm always be just a regular guy, ain't nothing special, but these principles are really, really special. I've transformed my life personally and professionally with them.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too. I remember, God, I must have been 10 years into my career, and or I shouldn't say my career, 10 years into, being a grown up, and not just waiting tables or bussing tables, but actually working a professional job. And no one had told me about any of the personal professional development opportunities that are out there, or the knowledge and wisdom that's out there, that I could just, and when I discovered it, man, I became a geek for it. And it's nice, the format that you're writing in. It's nice. It makes it very digestible, right? Easy to read, easy to digest, easy to pull that. Like you said, the whole page should be highlighted, right? Because it's all the whole thing is the golden nugget that you're trying to search through all these longer books for. So
yeah, and I just share with you or your audience, if you'd like to preview these books, you can go to bluecollarleadership.com/download.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually, I don't know how many books we have featured there, but there's usually about 15 pages. Usually for my books, it's usually the first 15 pages, which is pretty much 5 chapters from one of these 30 chapter books. And you don't have to subscribe. You don't have to put your email. You just click on the button and read it right there. I don't spam people. I don't do all the normal stuff everybody does. I don't chase clients. I don't even follow up with clients. We met with someone a minute ago. We had a local meeting and we got done. It was a 2.5-hour meeting. We had never been there before. They want us to speak to their construction crew. They got about 90 people and 85 people, I think. They want us to speak on Christmas Eve morning, as a motivational, inspirational talk. And they didn't know us. Someone met me through LinkedIn, and I didn't know them either. But they referred us to this company, and I didn't expect a 2.5-hour meeting. But basically, they had a lot of this kind of talk, the good stuff. And they They were in sponge mode, soaking it up. When we got ready to leave, I said, you guys ain't got to worry about us harassing you. We know you're busy. You got our number. That's how you found us. You're welcome to call me 24/7, 365. I usually return my calls within 24 hours. And even if you never want to do business with us, I'll coach and mentor you, help you in any way. Same thing goes for you two guys there, Michael and Derek, and anybody listening. My cell phone's 334-728-4143. This one right here. I don't want to talk about football, deer hunting, golf, sports. I want to talk about personal growth, leadership, and development. It's a passion. I ain't trying to sell you anything. I just want to help you. And that's what I told them guys today. I ain't gonna be following up harassing you. Y'all know who we are and what we're about. If you want some business, you'll call us and we'll be down there and helping your team. So we just try to live what we teach.
Yeah.
I can attest for that because I had reached out to Mac a couple weeks ago, and probably an hour or two later, my cell phone was ringing, and I was surprised Mac was on the other line. So it was really cool. One of the thoughts that I had, Mac, our audience ranges from, students who are trying to figure out their path in life and, where they want to go and maybe figuring out if they want to, go to the traditional 4-year college or, 2-year college or trade school. What would you say to those younger folks that are listening? What are some things that they can implement in their life to help them along the path and kind of figure out and make them feel more comfortable with their decisions and which direction they want to go in?
Yes, I'll share a principle. It's all of our books are based on this principle. I learned it from a man named John Maxwell, who's one of the top leadership gurus in the world. We were with him and we've done a lot of training with him in the 2012 to 2015 range, but we were in Guatemala as part of a cultural transformation initiative to kick off cultural transformation across the entire nation of Guatemala. And 150 of us from around the world paid all of our expenses to go down and support John. We trained over 20,000 Guatemalan leaders there. And one of the principles that underpinned the training that we were doing, and I've heard him talk about it before, but that's where it really resonated with me. And he references some research studies from Harvard and Stanford, I think. Doesn't matter where they come from, but basically it says 87% of our results, success in life, come from our character, only 13% from competency. And the reason I'm sharing that when you ask that question is anybody at any age needs to know that, but especially if young folks, it's like putting money in the bank, compounding interest. If a young person understands that and starts focusing on developing their character, they do have to develop a competency, like you said. And my answer to that question relative to school is you've got to get an education. College is one place to get an education, but by far it's not the only place, and it may not be the best place. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a doctor, you might need to go to college. You want to run your own business, you may not ever have to go to college. You may drop out of high school. Henry Ford, I think he had a 6th grade education. He did all right, without college and formal education. I remember there's a story that said he was in some kind of, I guess it was court for something. Somebody was suing him, and the story goes that they were trying to, the attorneys on the other side were trying to make him look like an idiot or whatever, and talking about, his lack of education. And he told him, he said, sir, there's a machine on my desk, got 4 buttons on it. He said, you can't ask me a question that I can't push one of those buttons and get the answer. He said, I don't have to have the answer. I got to be able to get the answer. And he was implying he had built a team. But for the young folks, definitely figure out, I always tell them, follow your passion. You'll find your purpose. A lot of young folks, and I was one of them, back in school, and you start getting ready to graduate, they start talking about, what path do you want to do? And they start listing all these jobs and what they pay and all these college degrees. And what if you get this degree, what you should likely earn, and a lot of things. We did it back in school. We all gravitate which one pays the most. We start looking, the ones that pay the most, which one might I want to do, kind of thing. That's what a lot of young folks do. And unfortunately, a lot of them go down that path. They go to college, they go get a degree, and then they get out in the world. They don't even like doing that. They didn't think about it. Would they like it? They was looking at the payday. But the thing is, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you can't compete with somebody who is passionate about what you're doing. I mean, what they're doing. So first thing you got to do, focus on your character. Got to have a competency. But most people I run into is, most people don't have a competency issue. They got a character issue. Most people have more than enough competency. If you're talking about the young people, yeah, they got to go get some competency. I'd recommend, read some books relative to whatever you're passionate about. I was speaking to, I think he was 15 or 16 recently near Atlanta. We live outside of Atlanta, but we were in Atlanta speaking to some troubled teens that, in a home. They basically kind of like in jail. And I had some boys in my group, maybe about 10 or 12. And interesting, Derek, one of them, I didn't know this till afterwards, but one of them came in and he had went up and talked to, they had like chaperones in there. They wouldn't even leave them in class with me by themselves. They had to have, somebody with them in there monitoring them all the time. But this one kid got up and talked to one of the monitors. I didn't know what he said. Then he sat back down and everything went normal. And he was very proactive. He reached out to me in the class, and talked to me. But what happened was he didn't want to be in there because it was volunteer. It was a leadership camp for a week. They had all kind of camps going on, and we were just one of them. And he signed up for that. But when he got in there, within like 5-10 minutes, he didn't want to be there. So he told him he wanted to leave, and they had to call somebody to come get him on the radio. I didn't know all that happened though. But what happened was while he was waiting for them to come get him, he was listening to us talk. And by the time they come get him, he didn't want to leave. But I didn't know all that happened in there. And he recently, that was a month or two ago, he called me while we were in Utah on vacation last week. And because I had given my phone number, just like I did you guys a minute ago. I told him, when you get out, call me. I'll mentor you and help you, whatever I can do. You got to do the work, but I'll help you think, help you stay out of trouble if I can help you think, what you got to do to stay out of trouble. The reason I'm telling you that story was I went back a month later just as a follow-up. I gave him a book, told him, if you read this book, I'll come back a month later just for an hour or two and talk to you and give you another book. And that's what happened. So he was in that session too. And I was asking him about what are they passionate about. This young guy says, I like to cook. I said, you like to cook, Isaac? He said, yeah. I said, well, when you get out of here, man, you got to start watching YouTube. You got to work in an industry that's got something to do with food, whether you're a waiter or a waitress, doesn't matter. Just go get in that industry, start learning, start watching YouTube stuff, read books around people who are chefs or whatever, figure out what kind of cooking. But if you're passionate about it already at this age, go get in that lane and you'll excel in life. But you got to go learn. You can't just expect to go be the chef or the cook or whatever. And the whole time they told me this too, Derek, about him. They told me before I even met him, they said, Isaac, he causes trouble here. They said he doesn't read and he doesn't write too well. And out of all those kids, at the end of that first day, he was the one that come up and asked for a book. That's the reason they got books. Isaac come up and wanted a book, and they told me he couldn't read. And when I went back the second time, he told me, he said, I already read the whole book. And I said, oh yeah. He opened up the book. He said, yeah, I like this right here. I said, what's that say? And he read me a quote off of that page. And he's reading fine. But somehow the people that he's been with for like 8 months don't even know he knows how to read. And that's, doesn't mean they're bad people, but they're bad leaders. I mean, I'm with him for less than 2 hours, and I know that he reads. And people he's been with for 8 months who thinks he's a troublemaker don't know he reads. So that's just a story to relate to the young folks. Follow your passion. Follow your passion, you'll find your purpose. But you have to have a competency. You got to learn from somewhere. You can be self-educated. You can go to tech school. You can get certificates. You can go to college if you want. I went to college, but I don't remember what I learned. My company just paid me to go, and then gave me a $10,000 bonus when I graduated. So I did that along with a bunch of other people. But you got to, whatever you're going to do, though, you got to focus on your character. And that's what all my books are about, helping people focus on their character, no matter what age they are. That's the key.
Can you I have two questions. One, I've got to know, but we can come back to this. I just got to know how you handle being that accessible all the time. But the first question I got to ask you though is, when you're looking at character over competency, can we unpack that a little bit? Because I hear character, competency is the easy one, right? Like how good you are at something. Character, the quality of your character, the content of your character, but how does that become more important than how good you are at what you're doing?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And I'm glad you asked it, because there may be people watching or listening who had the same question or maybe don't understand it deep enough. And so you guys right here can validate it. And this is what I say in the room when I tell people. I said, don't worry about the numbers, 87-13. Those are the numbers, but don't worry about the numbers, because what you need to do is what you're asking me to do is help you do this right now. You need to validate in yourself. Are you buying into that? Do you believe that? Until you do, it doesn't matter, right? Like everything else in life. So when I'm speaking to leaders, but also entry level people, when I'm speaking to them, I tell them the same scenario. I just tell a different story. But right now, I'm speaking to you two as formal authority leaders, let's say, and I say, have you ever noticed that people get hired for what they know, their competency, their resume, their skills, talent, ability, skills, knowledge, all the stuff they can dump on you while you're doing an interview? That's why people get hired most often, is their competency. But then can you look back at your career and realize most people are fired for their character? They hired for competency and fired for character. And most everybody nods just like you do if they got any
Got me.
whatsoever, because that's true.
Yeah.
Anywhere we see people get hired for what they know, fired for who they are. I had a VP one time say, I hear you, but sometimes I think it is competency. Because I say it's never competency. Never. It's always character why somebody's getting terminated. And he'd been around, been through a lot of my trainings, and he said, yeah, but one time I got an example. He said, we hired somebody, they told us they could do, work with certain tools or software or whatever it was he was talking about. And he said, we got them in here and we found out they were sharp and all, but they didn't have a competency relative to what they told us. He said, so, we had to let them go because of their competency. I said, is that really why you let them go? He said, well, yeah, they couldn't do what they told us they could do. I said, oh, so you terminated them because they lied to you? He said, well, yeah, I guess you got a point. They lied. They said they could do this and they couldn't do it. It's character. And I've never had anyone yet tell me any, and I encourage it. I invite it because maybe somebody will tell me one day something that I can't trace back to character. But everything is related to character. It's how you do what you do. It's why you do it. It's when you do it or don't do it. It's who you do it with or don't do it. Character is every single thing that we are. Most people think character means we're good or bad. But if someone only thinks that, that's because they hadn't studied character. They don't know much about what they don't know about. And there's a quote from Dr. Henry Cloud that I love related to character. And he says, character is the ability to meet the demands of reality. Whatever that is. If I got a bad relationship at home with my spouse, I got a lack of character. I need to develop my character. Maybe I picked the wrong spouse, or either I'm being the wrong guy. Either way, I'm responsible as a person. If I got a bad relationship with my child, or I'm divorced and got a bad relationship through all of that mess, which I got experience with, and I know all about that stuff. As soon as I fixed me, everything got fine. My relationship with my ex got fine. My relationship with my son, who hated me from age 15 to 19, got fine. Everything in my life got better when I got better, even though a lot of other people didn't change. So that's kind of how you validate it. Simply, Michael, is people get hired for what they know and fired for who they are. If you can validate that, and I'll give you an example too. Another one. Let's say I'm a doctor. Just get it outside the blue collar space so people can forget about their world and just look out the window for a minute. Let's say I'm a doctor. Let's say I got all the degrees I need to be a doctor. I'm highly competent. Maybe I'm the best skilled at what I do. I'm the top of my class. But when I get out there, if my support staff don't want to interact with me, my patients give me bad word of mouth advertisement because I don't have, I ain't warm and fuzzy. I don't care about their life. I just want to do what I do and treat them like an object. Well, I ain't going to have a very good business. And if nobody wants to refer me or come back to me, it don't matter how much competency I have. I can't get anybody's business. Nobody wants to work with me. I may have high turnover. Back to the blue collar space. If you got a bigger organization, you may have 10 formal authority frontline leaders, and there may be one of them whose team members are always turnover. Well, it ain't, and that person, if it's, let's say it's a he, that person is blaming HR for sending them bad folks, but they send everybody else folks, and those folks are fine. So what is it about this leader? This leader, people don't want to follow this leader. So there's a principle, people understand that the leaders can fire the people most of the time, unless you got union stuff going on and you got to go through a bunch of hoops. But let's just say in a normal situation where you can terminate somebody if you don't like the way they perform, the frontline entry level workforce has that same ability. It's called turnover. That's what we call it. But what I call it is fire the boss. If I'm reporting to you and I don't like you, I just quit and go work for somebody else. That's called turnover. But it's me firing the boss. And a lot of companies don't recognize that's what's going on when they're trying to address turnover. If they got a turnover issue, they got a character issue. It's that everything's a character issue. Every single thing. Anyway, I got wound up on that. Did that answer your question?
That was great.
So yeah, Mac, I'm in a very people-oriented business, the commercial cleaning space, right? So every time, we expand or grow, we're adding people to our team. And, we've had to help people move along the line. I've seen a lot of people grow with the company. I've seen other people get to a point where, they need to exit the company for one reason or another. Maybe they reached their ceiling, or like you said, it was a character flaw with the leader that they had, or whatever the case may be. But my question is, so as a leader, what is the best way to help people develop that character so they can continue to build and grow themselves, whether it's with the organization or with another one?
Yep. So everything is always a big answer with me. I'll try to narrow it down.
That's okay.
Everything's like an 8-hour course almost, or 10 or 8-day course. It's just so deep. Everything's built on top of everything else. But the number one thing, and it's the simplest, but at the same time, it's the hardest. Like if I'm running a company, I mean, I logged 11,000 hours leading teams between 2005 and 2012, as a consultant. Nobody reported to me, but I had to influence the people to accomplish the mission, or either I didn't get to come back and nothing happened while I was there, that ain't the kind of advertisement you want for your business. So you got to get results, right? So I had to do all the stuff we're talking about without a formal position of authority. I was just a consultant. They could say he's a jerk, we don't like him, and I wouldn't got to come back and they wouldn't have had to change, but that ain't what happened. So the first thing you got to do is, as a leader, I got to be right. This type of leadership that we write about and speak about, it's more caught than taught, which means the leader's got to model it. I can't just expect it. It's the same thing we've always heard. Don't tell somebody to do something you ain't going to do yourself. So when leaders bring us in, they start talking about, sometimes they want us to focus on the frontline workforce. That's most often where they see the problem. I was with a group in Lexington, Kentucky recently, and I asked them, I said, everybody knows when there's a problem with the frontline entry-level workforce, all the people on the org chart above the entry-level workforce, which is an entire leadership, command chain, you want to call it that, like a military org chart or chain of command. I said, who's responsible for these folks, entry-level people, not doing their work? Everybody knows who it is. It's these leaders. It's their leader, right? So I said, that's a principle. The leader is always responsible for the team doing the work. I agree with that. These individuals need to get better, 100%. And I teach and help them get better too, the individual, because that's what the leader's got to do, right? If I got a 10-person team, I got to get all 10 people to start wanting to get better. For my team to get better, only one has to get better. But as a leader, I want everybody to start getting better. So let's say the performance is low. So, you know what rolls downhill. I don't use profanity, but we all know what rolls downhill. I used to. I'm better now, so I quit doing that. But everybody knows entry-level leaders are the one that gets blamed for the performance of the crew. So I said, that's a principle. And I'm asking these top 10 leaders of a company, and the owner was in there. I said, so if that's a principle for what's happening here, this leader is responsible. I said, well, who's responsible for this leader not doing what they're supposed to do with this crew? I said, it's the next level leader. I said, and if the next level leader's not helping this leader be successful, I said, y'all see where we're going with this, right? We're going all the way to the top. Because the root cause of culture is the top leader's values. So I'm just getting back to, that's why it's so important for the top leader to be growing and developing themselves. They got to create some space for these other people to grow and develop themselves. If they don't, if I'm here, I introduce this type development to my crew and they actually start learning, but I'm not learning. It's something called the law of the lid. And it's the leader's values is what I'm talking about, the character side. If I'm learning about leadership at a level the leader, the owner, the top leader doesn't know about, then I'm start banging my head against that leader's character. I may see how we need to communicate better or how we need to treat people better when things go wrong or mistakes are made. Instead of blaming people, let's mistake proof it so we can't make that mistake anymore, kind of thing. But if the leader just wants to blame somebody and fire them because they made a mistake, and I want to grow and develop and build relationships, well, I'm banging my head. This leader doesn't want to do that. So either I can't beat them, join them, and regress back down here where I can remain comfortable and keep my job, or I got to exit the company and go find a leader that's got room and capacity for me to grow. But this organization won't get any better until this leader gets better. So getting back to your primary question, which that's the root cause though, the top leader's got to grow and develop themselves, because if they're not growing and developing their people, it's because they hadn't grown and developed themselves enough. And so I ain't trying to sell you nothing, but I'm trying to tell you, I wrote a book for that purpose of developing the entry-level workforce, and it's called Blue Collar Leadership: Leading from the Front Lines. And again, I told you guys earlier where you can go read the first 5 chapters of this book. You can also get on my podcast, episode 65, and listen to 30 episodes of me talking about this book. 15 hours for free. It ain't gonna take you 15 hours to read the book, maybe 3 or 4. But this book is intended for the entry-level worker. How do I become a sought-after employee? How do I become a sought-after employee of choice? Meaning, my boss wants to promote me. My boss wants to give me raises. Other companies want to steal me away, so I got options. How do I make my life better? How do I become a high-impact individual? That's what this 30 chapters on. How do I lead myself well, in spite of my boss, in spite of my coworkers, in spite of my finances, in spite of my troubles at home? Why do I want to do a good job? Why should I want to do a good job for me, not for the boss? One of the principles in here I teach is you working for yourself. You know, the company I was at a minute ago, I was teaching those leaders this, and we were just there to just talk to them, not teach them and train, but this is the way I talk about everything. Ain't nothing else that I know how to talk about without teaching. But the whole point is, I told them what I want to help your people in your organization know is they don't work at whatever's on the wall, whatever's on the shirt pocket. They're not working for that company. They're working at that company. Every individual at every level, this is a principle, needs to know, I'm working for me. I'm working for Mack Story. I want to grow this business right here. I want to do it. Let's say I'm reporting to you, Derek, and you're my boss. You're the owner of my company. I don't care how you treat me or anybody else for that matter. What I care about relative to the point I'm making now is how well do I serve my boss, my leader, my number one customer. Everybody outside of me is a customer. If you learn what's in this book, you start to see everybody different. It changes everything. Everybody is a customer of mine. What's the best kind of advertisement? Word of mouth advertisement. So if I want to grow this business, I need the most influence I can have. And that's our definition of influence, of leadership. One word definition: influence. Everybody's got it already. So everybody is a leader because leadership is influence. We want to help you as an individual. How do you develop 360 degrees? You can influence the boss, your coworkers. If you are the boss, you can influence people who report to you 360 degrees from wherever you're at. That's what this book is about. So when I understand I'm working for me, and everything that I do, I'm either generating positive word of mouth or negative word of mouth. If somebody's saying negative stuff about me, my influence is going down. If somebody's saying positive stuff, my influence is going up. This book's got how did I get promoted? Me, Mack Story, 14 times in my 20-year career. I should have been fired 100 times for my character. But none of my companies did this type of development. All they cared about was performance, and I was a very high performer. But there's a lot of things in here that I got right back in those days. There's a lot of things in here that I never thought about back in those days. But these will help. What's in this book as a leader, like you said, if I'm a leader, I got to learn what's in this book. Doesn't mean I have to be perfect. I don't even have to be very far ahead. I just need to be ahead enough to know I want to use this book as a resource to develop my people. And we've got a simple method of book study. We actually learned it in Guatemala with John Maxwell, like I was telling you about. It's a free. You don't have to, again, you ain't got to sign up. You can just go right there and watch it. It's a link to YouTube, but bluecollarleadership.com/book study training. You'll see 4 testimonials from people around the country that do that method. And you'll also see about an hour and a half video of an entry-level worker for the city of St. Peters, Missouri, that works in a recycling center. He's about 65 years old now, I think. Entry-level worker. He's got a team of 10 people. Not that he's the boss. He's one of the 10. Actually, he got promoted now because of probably all of this. But he is the boss now. But the time he made that video with me, he wasn't the boss and had no desire to be the boss. And but he was facilitating a book study like we teach in that 45-minute video training. He was doing 2 a week, 2 chapters a week. He had been doing it for over 10 years. And very, very simple. The only cost you have is getting your team a book. And then the cost of the 10 to 15 minutes per week, every week, for however long you want to do it. You know, one book's 30 weeks. If you do what we're teaching you in there, one book is 30 weeks. Your gung ho people gonna read this book in a couple of days, but that's okay. They still go participate in the book study that we teach. Your gung ho people gonna read this in a hurry, and then they're gonna go find a podcast and start listening, and then they may start buying their own books. You with me? I call those the hungry.
Yeah.
The hungry people gonna feed themselves, but a leader like you has to be feeding everybody because you're responsible. But what you got to know is you got to identify the people who are hungry, and you got to feed them. Just like that guy's name's Jim. His leaders are feeding him by allowing him to do book studies with his team, because you don't have to teach anything. There's no homework. There's no preparation. There's no teaching why you're doing it. And most people use a phone and play the audio book and follow along in the real book, so they don't even have to read out loud together. And then they talk about their key takeaway and why. So that's number one thing. Remember, I got long answers. Number one thing, develop yourself as a leader, and just sum them out every day forever. And I'm talking like 5 minutes. You can do 5 hours if you want to, but you got to at least do like 5 minutes. If you're busy, do 5 minutes. If it's Sunday afternoon, you caught up, you start reading a book, you got an hour, do an hour. You want to read the whole book, it's 4 hours, do 4 hours. But tomorrow, you still got to do your 5 minutes. And I encourage the entry-level workforce, when I'm sharing them with this book, I tell them a paragraph a day, the rest of your life, 30 seconds. Can you dedicate 30 seconds to trying to get better for the rest of your life? And I'll say, any of you ever use the toilet? Everybody use the toilet, right? I said, you can read a paragraph on the toilet. I call it adult potty training. You can learn to have a better life while you're sitting on the toilet. Or you can read the phone and read some junk, scroll about nothing. It's up to you. So develop yourself, and then you got to intentionally develop your people. And I would tell you, just since you asked, bluecollarleadership.com/implement, IMPLEMENT. That's a website where we got self-guided stuff. So if you as an individual, if you want to lead yourself through personal development, you can go there, check out. There's 6-7 things we show you how to do. One of them is a podcast. It's free. We tell you to go use the podcast, listen to it, start trying to implement the stuff, play it for your team. It's free. Pull 4 or 5 people together, play an episode, pause it, talk about it, generate, provoke thought, raise awareness. So bluecollarleadership.com/implement, lots of free stuff right there, or either low cost. So that page is low cost or no cost. I'll probably tell you about the books. It's $20. I don't mind selling somebody a book. Books changed my life, still changing my life. Every one of them has been worth whatever I had to pay to get it. Was that a good answer, Derek?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely agree. Is there a way as a leader, when we allow our leaders to hire their own teams? So when we're doing the interview and hiring, they're asking the questions. And at the end of the day, from what you said, trying to get a glimpse of what that person's character is like.
Yep.
Do you have any recommendations of how do you, in a 15, 20-minute conversation, how can you figure out whether that person's character is willing to invest in themselves or worthy of you investing in them?
Okay. So I got a couple of different ways, and I got a couple of stories. So the number one way, again, you as a leader, and I'm talking you in general, anybody who's a leader, owner of a company, CEO, whatever the top title is, you got to know what I'm about to tell you. And I kind of told you already, but I'm going to frame it slightly different. Whoever's hiring people, the greater their character, the greater the people they're going to hire character is going to be that they're hiring. And it kind of goes like this. Okay. You ever meet somebody, and that's just a general statement. I'm going to tell you some specific things here in a second. But you ever meet people who have less character than you? And how long does it usually take when you meet somebody who obviously has less character than you? How long does it usually take you figure that out?
30 seconds.
Not long.
Yeah.
But guess what happens when people meet us who have better character than us? It's about how long it takes them to figure out they have better character than us. It's the same thing, except we don't know that. We can't see up. That's why sometimes we interview some good people, but they don't want to work here. They don't have work. They don't want to work here. Or maybe the one hiring them has a good character, and I interview somebody with good character. They like me, and they buying my character, and I'm buying their character, and then they go out and join a team or they go report to somebody else, and that person don't have the character. So then we say, well, whenever we do get a good one, they won't stick around. That's because when they actually learned who we are, they don't want to stick around. We put on a big dog and pony show and made them believe what we were saying, but then when they got in here, they didn't see what we were saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the more of the development stuff we do with the people hiring, if I'm a 3, see, people who are 3s hire twos and 3s at best. People who are 6s hire 5s and 6s. The greater our character on a scale of 1 to 10, relatively speaking, the higher our character. Who we are is who we attract. So if I'm an 8, I'm going to attract some 7 and 8s. 3s ain't going to be attracted to me because I'm talking stuff they ain't interested in doing, right? Like you're talking about. So Chick-fil-A was a client of ours. This is a story. They were a client of ours, one particular store, for 3 years down in Opelika, Alabama. We were interviewing their, they call them operators, the guy who owns the store, but he doesn't really own it. Chick-fil-A always owns it, but he operates it. That's why they call him operator. So I had him speak to a group where we were speaking at a conference, and I invited him in to share, how does Chick-fil-A do? What you're talking about. He said, so, he said at Chick-fil-A for his store at that time, entry-level position, they don't really pay any better than most other places pay. They try to pay on the top end, but not like away from the top end. They just want to be on the top scale of pay. And he said, he said, when I have an entry-level position working the cash register, he said, I usually have 250 applicants. I mean, imagine if you had 250 applicants for an entry-level job. That's called you got good word of mouth advertisement out there, and people want to work here, and they're lined up to work here. So now you can be very, very picky about who gets to work here. And he says, we're always hiring for character. That's one of the things we teach. You got to hire for character and train for competence. If it's the kind of job you can actually train, it's better if they also know the competence. But ultimately, if it's something you can learn on the job, character matters far more than the competence. Because if they got a high degree of character, they're going to do whatever they got to do to learn the job. They always have, and they always will. And so he said during the interview process, and by the way, they have 3 interviews. The person they're going to report to interviews them. The general manager of the store interviews them, and I believe the operator interviews them. Either way, there's 3. They got to make it through 3 sets of folks. Oh, never mind. It was the person they're going to report to, and the general manager, and then some of the team members they're going to work with. So the team members are engaged. They're involved in selecting the person. Because sometimes he told me, he said, sometimes we don't think we should hire the person, but the team wants to hire the person. He said, what we know is if the team wants to hire them and we communicate that we don't really want to hire them, but they do, they're much more likely to help that person be successful because I'm following them. I'm letting them lead me. The team wants this person. They're going to have to work with that person. But if I say, no, I don't want that person, I'm going to pick somebody that I want instead of who y'all want. Well, now they're more likely not to. They want to make me look bad because now I didn't do what they want to do. So instead of helping the person that I sent to them, if they're good character people, which a lot of them at Chick-fil-A are, they still going to help them. But if they need to do some character work, they probably going to say, well, we ain't going to help them. Mack sent we didn't want the person Mack sent, so we ain't going to support them. We're going to try to make them look bad so Mack thinks he made a bad choice. But he said sometimes in an interview, he said, I'll have my pen laying on the side of the table. And he said, I'll, accidentally knock it off. He said, I want to see, do they have a heart to serve? Do we bump heads trying to pick up the pen, so to speak? Or do they not even care that I dropped the pen? Because that's him and his store and Chick-fil-A as a whole. That's what they talk about, servant leadership. And that's what he's looking for, people with the heart to serve. He said, I can train them to do anything in this store. He said, but training them to have a heart to serve ain't such an easy thing. And I don't want to take the time and the energy and the cost to do that when I can just be selective and hire people. I had it was a book I think I was reading. I don't remember. This guy, when he would interview somebody, he'd take them out to dinner and he already had it staged and planned. And he would tell the waiter to mess up their order. Like, let's say I ordered medium rare. They bring my steak well done. He wants to see how would I interact in that situation? How would I talk to the person who messed up my order? Would I say nothing? Would I say something nicely? Say it's okay. I ain't, I know it's like I do. I'd say I'll eat it, don't matter what. But I will tell them I ordered this medium rare. You guys brought it well done, but I'm okay with it. It's still meat. I'm gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm still gonna give you a 20% tip. That sort of thing. That's the way I handle it. But unless somebody's really rude to me, like outwardly rude, they're going to get a 20% tip automatic. I mean, back before COVID hit, that was, always at least give them that. That was a minimum. So that's the way The number one way though is the greater your character, the faster you can identify character or lack of character. We say, John talks about it, John Maxwell, he says, the greater your character, the farther you can see, the faster you can see, and the more you can see relative to character. I may see something that's a red flag just like that, and 10 people around me ain't even noticed it. And I'm ready not to have nothing to do with that person. And everybody else still just hanging out. They just missed it. Same way with personal relationships. A lot of times people meet somebody and they miss the red flags, and then they end up in a bad relationship. And I'm looking for the pink flags. I don't even need a red flag if it's about personal relationship. But that's the ultimate way is we got to grow our character. And if I'm a business owner, I got to know whoever's hiring's I got to be developing their character because it matters so much, because I want to help them be able to see what they can't see. And it doesn't mean they're bad people that they can't see it, but the greater their character, the faster they're going to identify. You'll pick up on all these little tiny things in an interview that, everybody knows somebody shows up late. That's a lack of character. But how they talk to the receptionist, or how they talk to you or don't talk to you, or they roll their eyes or don't roll their eyes, all that basic stuff people know. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that you just missing if you ain't developing a high level of character.
Can we maybe list like some of the criteria or qualities of what high character is, just to kind of put some definition to it? I mean, I think most people, if you say, they've got good character, they've got, we kind of have the idea, but specifically when you talk about it, what do you mean by good character, great character, high character?
Okay. So when I talk about high impact leadership, one thing I tell people, that means it's not about me, but it starts with me. Like an owner of a company, developing you. If I'm the owner of the company, developing you ain't about me. It's about you, but it starts with me. Until I can develop me, I can't develop you. And I'm going to just read a few things. There's probably thousands, but this is a book called Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High Impact Players. This comes after how do I lead me well? This is how do I lead myself well relative to working with a team. And I'm going to just read you some of these traits, because all these are character traits. Mm-hmm. The very first one in the book, be growth oriented, meaning I want to learn. And I'll ask you, remember I said leadership's influence, right? So let's say you can hire a team member. You're the boss, whoever you are listening, you're the boss. You get to hire a team member. There's 2 people standing there. You only know one thing about each one of them is, are they growth oriented or not? So you got one person who's growth oriented. They want to learn. They're anxious to learn. The other person, whatever they show up with, that's all effort they want to put out. They know how to do what you're asking them to do. They're qualified to do the job, but they ain't necessarily interested in learning nothing else. They don't want to hold their hand up and volunteer to learn anything else. They're not going to be reading, studying on their own. They can do what you need them to be hired to do. They're good to go. The other one also can do what you want to hire them to do. They're good to go. Both of them have the basic competency, the skills, but one of them's growth oriented. The other one's happy with what they got. If you're the boss, which person would you hire? Everybody knows I'm going to hire the growth-oriented person, unless you got an insecure boss. If you got an insecure boss, they want the person who don't want to grow because they don't want to be threatened. See how it gets tricky in a hurry, right? Mm-hmm. Common sense says hire the growth-oriented. And when I'm speaking to people, I say, so that's obvious which one you would hire. If you could give, let's say both these people are already on your team. Now you're the boss. You got an opportunity to give one of them people a raise. You're going to give the growth-oriented person that's always reading, learning, asking you to learn something new on the job, learn a new skill, work late on somebody else's job so you can figure out what they're doing? Or you want the status quo person who just, they just want to come in, do their 8 and hit the gate. Everybody knows which person to get the raise if you're the boss. It's the person that's growth-oriented. But the real question now is, when I'm speaking to an audience, you don't have to answer this out loud. Which one are you? Are you the growth-oriented person, or are you the stagnant person? That's the questions we got to look at. And then the reason that's the first one in this book is because it's fundamental to everything else in this book or any other book. You got to be growth-oriented, right? The second one in this book is be trustworthy. And that's fundamentally the key to this whole thing. Leadership, when I talk about influence, I'm talking about authentic influence, not artificial influence. When somebody's got a position or title, formal authority leader, that position or title or rank or whatever you want to call it, comes with a certain amount of artificial influence, right? The power, the control, the authority of that job comes with what I call artificial influence. You don't have to do nothing to get that except be in that position. I can set your pay. I can decide if you get off early or not. So the other thing, we're talking about being trustworthy. The most important piece relative to what I talk about is authentic influence, meaning you're following me because of who I am, not what I am, not because I'm the boss. You're following me because you trust me. So one of those traits is I have to be trustworthy, but even that's relative. If I'm dealing with criminals, guess what I got to be trustworthy to a criminal? I got to be a criminal like them. If they think I'm a straight shooter, I'm going to go rat them out to the law. They don't want to hang around me, right? That's why all this stuff, it's all relative based on who do you want to be. And I'm assuming somebody wants to be a positive person, live with positive values and have positive influence. But it also works for negative. So let's assume positive, like I always talk about, but don't forget that it works in a negative as well. So to establish authentic influence, which is based on trust, I have to be trustworthy. So if trust is the foundation of influence, authentic influence, I don't always say authentic, but that's what I'm always talking about. When you hear me say influence, it's the real kind, not the artificial kind. So I got to be trustworthy. So trust is the foundation of influence. So we take it down to this foundation. One of the character traits, trust. But now, where does trust come from? If trust is the foundation of authentic influence, what's the foundation of trust? And I break that down in my books is to two components, motivation and manipulation. If you feel, it doesn't matter. I can be talking to, right now I'm talking to Derek and Michael. Let's just say Michael's the big one on my screen at the moment. You maxed out here on the Mac, so I see you big. I'm going to use you. Let's say Michael's buying what I'm selling. Everything I've been talking about on this podcast, Michael's buying what I'm selling. So we're building trust. He feels that I'm motivating him. So motivation is based on mutual benefit. I'm going to benefit, you're going to benefit. So if you value the stuff I'm talking about, you're going to feel motivated. Let's make Derek the bad guy now in this situation. I know you ain't a bad guy, Derek.
Yeah, thank you.
So in this situation, let's say Derek's not buying into what I'm saying. So the same time Michael's feeling motivated, Derek's feeling manipulated. Manipulation means I benefit. Derek's thinking, oh, Mac just trying to sell all this stuff. He's trying to get us to buy something. He ain't really trying to help us. But Michael feels like, oh, he really seemed like he's trying to help us. So you feel motivated. Derek feels manipulated. So if you feel manipulated, and I don't get to decide how you feel, I'm saying the exact same thing to the audience. The audience gets to decide if they feel manipulated or motivated. You know, is there mutual benefit, or is it just me speaking for my benefit? If you feel manipulated, there's no foundation for trust to be built. If you feel motivated, doesn't mean you trust me, but now there's at least a foundation. You feel there's mutual benefit, but I still got to do all the things I got to do relative to that specific situation to be trustworthy. You may trust my character, but if you need heart surgery, you don't want me to do it because I ain't got the competency, right? I got the 87%, but I ain't got the 13 relative to that specific mission.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Makes perfect sense.
That's how it, you know, that's some traits. Let me just rattle off a few more. Since you asked, be humble. Okay. You got somebody who's cocky, pride and ego. They just full of it. I always tell people, if you got a mouthful of pride and ego, it's hard to swallow the truth. And
Yeah.
there's some people, you guys have met them. I've met them. There's some people that if they don't know, you can't tell them.
Mm-hmm.
And you hope they're not on your team. Sometimes they are. But being humble, Rhea and I spoke, my wife Rhea, we spoke to a group of prison wardens multiple years, part of a transformational development program, 9-month program for prison wardens. And I got to meet the prison warden of, he's retired now, but he was over Angola prison in Louisiana State Penitentiary. When he overtook it, it was known as the bloodiest prison in the U.S. prison system. And he led like all this stuff I'm talking about. He turned it around in an amazing way. But I heard him also speak to the wardens that we were speaking to that day. And one of the things he said was be humble so you don't stumble. But if you could pick a person to be on your team, do you want a humble person or a cocky person? If you had to work with them all day. And I always tell people there's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And it really is. the fine line between arrogance and confidence, and it's called humility. Right? I can be highly intelligent, but if I'm humble, people are going to be okay with it. I can be down on the low end of intelligence, and if I'm cocky and arrogant, people ain't going to be okay with it. Even though I'm an idiot, I don't know I'm an idiot because I think I'm the man, kind of stuff. So all these character traits is kind of just like the chemicals and the periodic table with all the elements that we have on Earth. You mix them all together in a million different ways, and you get a different outcome. It's the same way with leadership principles. You say, well, I tried what you said, Mac, it didn't work. Well, in that situation, you need to do that and these 15 things instead of that and those 3 things that you knew about. Those 15 things you didn't know about need to go with. You see what I'm saying? You make a different recipe. And you say, well, how do I know what thing to do? You got to grow and learn and experience and flop around like a fish out of water and get it wrong and realize what you can't do is say this stuff doesn't work. It works every time if you got the right recipe. And every time you don't have the right recipe, it ain't going to work. What you got to do is, I'm going to read you a couple more. The next one, be responsible. I'm responsible. You know, I just spoke to these other folks, so I'm getting that conversation and this one mixed up. Did I tell you about my son hating me from age 15 to 19?
Yes, sir.
Did I tell you about blaming his parents, his
No.
mom, his parents for him hating me?
No.
So see, back then I wasn't being responsible like I am now. So just to share with you how that looks in that situation as a divorced, father. And when Eric was about 5, we got divorced and we had joint custody. He was with me a week, her a week. So when he got to be a teenager, he realized Dad treats me like a dictator, like I'm a little Marine. His mom used to say, he ain't a Marine. He ain't at Paris Island. He ain't at boot camp. Neither am I. Quit treating us like that. But I had all that junk in me and I brought it home and it was just who I was. That was not the way to be, but that's who I was back then. And so if you would have met me back in those days, I would have blamed his mother. And I did. I blamed his mother. I blamed his stepfather. I blamed her family, his family, everybody but one person. Y'all know who I wasn't blaming, right? Me. So I blamed all of them that he hated me and didn't want nothing to do with me. When he was 17, I discovered this stuff, started reading it every day. My mom started seeing me change, started telling him, hey, your dad's changing, because he still had a relationship with my mom. And she started reading because she couldn't believe I was changing so much. So she wanted to know what it was that I was reading that was causing me to transform. So then she could articulate to him what I was actually learning. So she was loaning me her influence. So 2 years into my growth, 4 years into him hating me, he actually gave me another chance to rebuild the relationship. And I didn't start reading all this stuff thinking I'm going to be able to rebuild that relationship with him. I thought it was over. And I didn't have a good relationship with my dad and still don't, even though I did try to fix it. Once I learned all this, he didn't want to do his part. So ain't nothing I can do about that part. So we don't have a relationship. But what I know today, you talk to me and speak to me today, what I know is a fact. They ain't but one person on this planet make that boy stop talking to me. Because he started back talking to me when he was 19. He's 34 today. He never quit. We talk all the time. He actually come work with me for about 2 or 3 years when I was doing lean consulting while he was 19 years old. He started reading all these books because it interested him what had caused me to change. And then it resonated with him. So then when he started learning this stuff that I was learning, it just made it that much easier to come together.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So that's still, like I say, it's a lot of long answers. I'm going to just read a list without a story. Be positive, be flexible, be focused, be disciplined. All these chapters start with the word be, so I ain't going to read be. I'm going to just read off some of the traits you were asking. Intentional, driven, inspired, proud, not proud in a wrong way, but proud of doing a good job. Like it matters what kind of job I do, that kind of pride, right? Brave, meaning the courage to stand alone sometime when other people won't stand up for themselves or for each other. Sometimes it's when you start learning this content to be brave enough to learn it, start building a relationship with the boss. Yesterday, everybody was talking about the boss and I was one of them. Today, I'm learning this stuff and I'm trying to help the boss to turn our organization around. Now everybody's talking about the boss and me. Now I done joined side with the boss. So got to be brave, be teachable, open-minded, approachable, helpful, observant, engaged, present, understanding, competent, certain, meaning be certain, meaning to know. Like if you don't know, say you don't know. If you do know, say you do know, but don't pretend to know when you don't, right? Be motivational, inspirational, aware, be careful. That means kind of be careful who you hang around, who you don't hang around. We become the average of the 5 people we hang around the most by choice. We start to eat what they eat, drink what they drink, do what they do, get the results in life they have, start to have similar circumstances. The last 3, be optimistic, be realistic, and be relentless. We started with be growth oriented, we end with being relentless relative to those 30 traits. But it's endless. It's endless traits.
Yeah.
But to see them, guys, to see the value of one, you got to separate the one. I'll give you an example. Because most people can't see the one, they see all of it. But you already know this. Everybody already knows this. Whatever the situation is, to build trust with you relative to that situation, I got to get everything right related to that situation to build trust. Guess how many things I got to get wrong to create distrust? One. Yeah. I get one wrong, I'm creating distrust. I may not have lost all trust, but as soon as I get one thing wrong related to a situation, I'm starting to create distrust. So the way you see it is, let's see, open-minded. That's chapter 15. Think about that one trait. Who's going to have the most trust with you? Who's going to build the most trust with you? If only you know that one trait. Somebody who's closed-minded, somebody who's open-minded. Everybody already knows. But the thing is, which one are we? That's what we got to do as we learn. We got to look out the window and say, how does this really apply in the world? And then how am I doing relative to this principle? And then you got to be able to remember it. I told those leaders a minute ago we were speaking with, I can teach you leadership on this podcast. I can teach it on my podcast. I can teach it from a stage talking to 3,000 people. I can teach it in my book. You can learn all about leadership, listen to a podcast, reading a book, going to an event. You can learn all about it, but you can't learn it until you do it. Just like whatever each one of you do. You start talking to me. I'll shut up. You talk for an hour. I'm learning about what you do. I ain't learning what you do till I got to go master whatever it is you've mastered in your life. So that's why just get somebody to go through a book, watch a video, listen to a podcast. If somebody gets hungry and starts doing that leadership drill over time, they'll learn how to actually do it.
Yeah.
But just sending somebody to a conference ain't going to change them, ain't going to change the world. Leaders, you got to have that leadership drip. It's okay when we come in the rooms, same thing as this podcast, I'm spraying you with a fire hose. Stuff flying by, some of it sticks. You start thinking about it, man, that made a lot of sense. 10 minutes later, you ain't heard the last 10 minutes because you think about that nugget you got a few minutes ago and you miss everything else. So we call this the fire hose. It's kind of like, whenever you're growing like a real tree, say a real tree is growing or something in your garden. You out there growing the garden. You don't go out there and plant the corn and then tomorrow walk out there and pull an ear of corn off and go cook it. You got to go through the process. The process is what changes you. The event doesn't change you. It's the process. When us speaking today, reading a book, that's an event. That's the fire hose. But what transforms people is the process. It's the watering the corn, getting the weeds out, putting fertilizer in. If it needs to be in a shady spot, put it in a shady spot, while you're growing it. All that stuff, that's what leads to transformation. And it takes however long it takes. Just like the corn, we ain't in control. You give credit to whoever you want to give credit to in the universe, or you can just think that's just the way it is. But whichever way, corn is corn. It's going to do what it does in the amount of time it's supposed to do it. And as people, we're the same way. We're not going to get the results that we're supposed to get until we do the work we're supposed to do. And we may not know what that work is. So when Rhea and I speak at a company, our goal at a conference or at a company on site doing training and development, we speak to 10 people sometimes we speak to 3,000 people at a conference or 10 people inside a company. What we tell them is we're here to provoke thought and raise awareness. I don't know you. I don't know where you've been, where you're going, what problems you're dealing with in your life. All I know is if you learn these principles, your life's going to get better at home and at work. I'm here to provoke thought, raise awareness. What you do with it, up to you.
Well, you've certainly provoked some thoughts with me so far. I love the stuff about character, Mac. I never really had thought about it with regards to hiring but I think you're spot on. 100%. Every person I've ever fired is because a character. Like it's wild. I never, and again, in 20, 25 years, I've never thought of it that way, but it's,
Can I share something with you about that?
yes, sir.
So I had a leader one time. Uh, he brought we were actually doing training at his company, and one day he said, "Come in my office, man. I got to talk to you." I said, "All right." He said, "Man, we've been doing this leadership stuff, and I got to make a hard decision." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I got to let a good guy go." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "He's really good competency wide, but I'm learning about all this character stuff, and he not wanting to get on board, and he ain't learning. He's resistant." I said, "Okay." So I turned around and I got on his whiteboard and I drew a T. One of my books, I have this example. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but I drew the 87-13, 87% character, 13% competency. I wrote it on the top of the T. I said, "So what kind of grade would you give him with his character?" He's like, "Out of 100." He said, "I give him a 20." I said, "What about for his competency?" He said, "I give him a 85." I did the math to give it a weighted average. See, the weighted goes more to character when you do the math. And if he had a 100 in competency, he still only got a 13 out of 100. You with me?
Yep.
So most of it comes from the character side. So whatever, it seems like the numbers when you do the real math, seem like it came out to like 17%. 17 out of 100. That's why he's getting fired, because of his character, not because of his competency. I said, "Okay, that's his problem." I said, "So relative to you as a leader and owner of this company, you see where your problem is at is character. Where do you invest all your time, money, and resources? Character or competency?" See the light bulb going off in his head. He said, "Oh, before we brought you in here, it was 100% competency and 0% character."
Yeah.
He said, "Today, I'd probably say we do I'd say about 90% on the, you know, competency, but we starting to do about 10%, on the character." So he got like a whatever the numbers were, he got like a 14 grade. I said, "So we got character problems in our company, and we don't do character development. We got to do competency development. It's required, right?
Yep.
Character development is not required. So it takes a higher level leader with a higher degree of character to value developing the people in the company. And the best companies say they can't afford not to do it. Like Chick-fil-A is built on this stuff we're talking about. They've been doing it since 1967 when Truett Cathy started Chick-fil-A. They've been doing it a long, long time. It never stops. They do it relentlessly. All the best companies do this stuff. And they say they can't afford not to do it. And they can't afford not to do it because this stuff is what made them exceptional. And then you got companies that don't do it at all. They struggle with personnel problems, internal problems, lack of communication, no trust, all this stuff that a bad organization would have that don't do this stuff. They say they can't afford to do it. And both of them are right. The one not doing it can't afford to do it because they ain't getting good results. They ain't got good performance. They ain't got good profits, and all. They ain't got all the stuff. So it's like the chicken and the egg thing, right? How do we get there? The ultimate way we get there is, as a top leader, I got to make sure that I'm leading us there. I got to do my work, and I got to lead in a way that inspires and motivates other people to want to do what I'm doing. So when I share this stuff, they want to buy in.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff, though. I'm proud of you guys. I can keep going, but y'all might want to stop.
No, well, I was just thinking, why don't we jump over to the members only section, part of the podcast here? We'll got a couple quick questions from you. I don't want to keep you here all day. A lot of respect for your time, and so grateful that you came on the show today with us, Mac.
It's amazing.
Yeah, great stuff. I was thinking about how I'm going to be listening to it again later, and I'm buying your damn book, whether you wanted to sell it or not, Mac. So if that's all right with you guys, we'll jump over to the member section for our listeners. If you don't know, we just launched a Patreon portal. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to go check it out. It's $5 whopping a month just to help us pay for the podcast. And but we're giving you lots of goodies and lots of action items to help you grow and scale your blue collar business. So hop over there, guys. Mac, one more time, if people want to find you, they want to learn more about you, they want to talk to you, where do they find you?
Yeah, my website, bluecollarleadership.com. And when you get there, there's a couple of buttons at the top. There's some other stuff there, but if you're looking for us to speak at our conference, click on the speaker button. If you're looking for us to do training and development, if you're curious about that, click on the training button and that'll lead you down 2 different paths. I'm on LinkedIn. I put out content pretty much every day. That's where I supply leadership drip to somebody who might want it. Follow me on LinkedIn, and then the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. It's out there. It's available on most podcast platforms, and also Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel. There's a lot of playlists. My podcast uploads there. I don't get a lot of traffic on the YouTube channel, but I still put it out there like everywhere else for those people who do want it. If you look at the playlist, you can find the audio uploads for all my book series, like this teamwork book. You go in there and look for Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork playlist, and right there you'll have the audio podcast. All 30 of those episodes will be right there together. But there's a video portion called Real People Getting Real Results, and it's about 30 something, 38 I think episodes now, but it's people I know. Like now I know you two. If you two read any of my books or listen to my podcast and you get results, and you reach out to me sometimes, say, man, we had you on the show and we got gung-ho and I did this and did that and got results, or shared it with somebody else, you're the kind of person I would interview. I only interview people that I actually know who's gotten some value from my content, and maybe somebody else's too, but it's got to be a personal connection for me to have on there. Nice. So there's business owners, there's entry-level people, there's CEOs of big companies, there's all kind of people, all different levels. The thing that ties them together is they doing personal growth and development at a minimum. Some of them doing leadership development with their team members, and you can hear from different kind of people in different industries, and you learn from them. So if you guys dive into my stuff for real, and you want to be on there, you can talk about your personal journey, your professional journey. You can plug your podcast. The key is I got to know you somehow, and sure. And I kind of know you now. So that's the best places to find me. And my phone number, 334-728-4143. Hardly anybody calls, Michael. That's how I'm able to keep up. Thousands of people don't call, just a few.
It's going to be the first question I ask you when we jump into the portal is going to be, how do you handle all that accessibility and time blocking? Because I know you were very gracious coming on to the show, and you said it right out of the gate. We're like, hey, I got as much time as you guys need, which is amazing. But at the same time, I'm like, man, how does he do that? Because I know a lot of us are running around like chickens with our heads cut off. So we'll jump over and I'll ask that question again. And thanks everybody for listening. Of course, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, YouTube, and we've got a couple other announcements coming up. We got an event coming up we want to talk to everybody about that we're pretty excited about in November. So stay tuned. And for those of you that are in the portal, you'll hear from us in a moment.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, 5 Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peoplease, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.